So we're coming to that time of year where many of us will start thinking about how we are going to change in 2026. We're going to be like, yeah, 2026, this is my year. This is the year that I'm going to start traveling more. I'm going to start saying no to people. I'm going to take more time for myself. I'm going to start an exercise program. I'm going to learn a language. I'm going to, I don't know, start going to bed at 9 o'clock. I'm going to start getting up early. And we have this idea that come, midnight on December the 31st, we're going to go to bed and then we're going to wake up this supreme version of ourselves. And invariably, all our good plans get laid to waste come 2nd of January, or at least the second or third week of January. And then we can end up beating ourselves up, going, oh, God, I'm such a failure. I have no willpower. I'm never going to change. And the reason that change often eludes us is that we don't understand the nature of change. We don't understand what actually happens in the brain when we try to change. So I'm just going to explain a little bit now. And if you've watched my earlier videos, you'll have heard me talk about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is our kind of executive control, like the CEO of the brain, which plans and thinks about the future and has a vision of how we want to be and knows what is good for us, knows kind of what we need to do in order to grow and change. So that's the prefrontal cortex. The emotional brain is, and the amygdala, which is part of the emotional brain. The emotional brain does not like to change. It has no concept of the past or the future, doesn't care about the future. All it cares about is comfort and safety in the present. Because the emotional brain, to the emotional brain, change is uncertain and uncertainty is danger. Because as far as the emotional brain is concerned, if we've been doing something and we haven't died, then we need to keep on doing it. Familiarity is safety, even if it's uncomfortable in the long term. So the patterns that we have developed over years or decades, whether or not they be, people pleasing, not being able to say no, working excessively, not being able to relax, being afraid of putting in boundaries, whatever, going to bed late, whatever the pattern is that we develop, those patterns become wired in the brain. And when we try to change, the emotional brain throws up resistance. And resistance can feel like fear. It can feel like lethargy. It can feel like apathy. It can feel like demotivation. It can feel like shame. So, for example, if you decide that, right, this year I'm going to say no when people ask me to do things. You're like, okay, right, great, I'm going to do that. And then New Year comes, somebody asks you to do something, and immediately you want to say no, but immediately up comes this force, like a fear or just like, oh, I can't say no, something bad's going to happen. Or you decide you're going to, start going home at 5 o'clock and not stay late at work. You're not going to check your emails. And then you go home and you're sitting there, right, I'm not going to check my emails. I'm going to focus. I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to do something different. And you feel this like anxiety coming. It's like, oh, I need to check my email. And you want to not check it, but there's this like force trying to push you towards it. It's because the emotional brain wants to keep on doing what it's always done. And when we try to change, it will throw up resistance. And in order to move through this resistance, we need to understand it. We need to expect it. We need to see it for what it is. So, for example, you decide you're going to start an exercise routine. You're going to start running in the morning or going for a walk in the morning. Set your alarm. You wake up. And intellectually, you're going, oh, just get out of bed. Just go. You said, promised yourself you would just get out of bed. And the emotional brain's going, oh, no, it's too cold out there. I'm so comfy. And then we'll do it tomorrow. And then you go, oh, okay, yeah, look, it's really cold outside. I'll do it tomorrow. And the emotional brain's going, hee, hee, hee. I'm not changing. And we need to understand this. We need to not believe the emotional brain's excuses or lies. We need to be able to override it. But to do this, we have to have a strong prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is very easily tired. So imagine it like a battery. So you wake up in the morning, if you've had a good sleep, then it's full. And you can, maybe start off in the morning, you can get out of bed and do it. But then later on in the day, when you decide that you're going to do something else that you promised yourself you're going to do, it can be depleted. And then the emotional brain wins in the battle. So it's also really important to understand we need to build capacity to change. And what I mean by that is we need to understand that we need to keep our prefrontal cortex healthy. And this can involve things like a good night's sleep. If we're not sleeping well, we can wake up with a depleted prefrontal cortex, excessive taking in of information. So scrolling through your phone, on the internet, reading excessive emails, that can really deplete the prefrontal cortex. So at the end of the day, when you think, oh, I'm going to go to the gym after work, you're like, it's so tired, it just can't be bothered. And the emotional brain's going, yeah, we're going to go home, we're going to watch Netflix. Phew. So it's really important to understand that as human beings, change is really difficult. And once we understand what resistance is, we can stop beating ourselves up and start to be curious. So being curious about change and why it's difficult can really help. So if you are planning to set some resolutions or make some changes, really kind of accept the fact that trying to do too much at once overwhelms the prefrontal cortex. There are too many patterns that are already embedded that if we try to change them all at once, there's a huge amount of resistance that comes up. So I would suggest, if you've got a list of resolutions, just pick one and start working slowly on that. Because what happens as well with change, we start off initially with a lot of motivation, especially when we haven't even started trying to change, because it's like, oh yeah, next week I'm going to do it. Yahoo! It's going to be great. I'm going to do it. So we start off with motivation, but motivation wanes. And once motivation wanes, we kind of get apathetic and like, oh, can't be bothered. So bear in mind that motivation wanes and you need to try and maintain motivation somehow. And paradoxically, understanding that motivation will wane can be quite motivating. Because when it does wane, you don't believe it. You're not going, oh, well, see, it's just, I wasn't cut out for it. I don't really want to do it. There must be a reason why I don't want to do it. If I really wanted to do it, I'd do it. But understanding that you are going to experience this, you're going to experience resistance, you're going to experience lack of motivation. But what does create motivation is action. So just going back to kind of how we tend to look at change, that we're going to do all of these things. We're going to become this perfect person. Every day we're going to go to the gym. Every day we're going to eat healthily, whatever. Once we understand that that is unrealistic, that it's really not going to happen, it is a fantasy, then we can start doing little things. Because as we do small things, it could be 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, going for a walk. If we can stick to one small thing, then that actually creates feelings of accomplishment, which then create more motivation. So it's kind of like, compound interest. You want to start with a little bit and slowly build up. Now, I know that you've probably heard this before. It is a cliche, but it is absolutely true. We need to start building tiny little habits. And this goes for schemas as well. When people try to change schemas, if they try to do too many, the brain gets overwhelmed. It's like, oh, there's too much fear or shame or unease or anxiety coming up. And once the emotional brain gets hyperactivated with emotion, it knocks the prefrontal cortex offline. And then we don't have that power to go, come on now, you know, let's just do a little bit today. Let's just go for a walk. So in order to successfully change, we have to anticipate resistance is a normal part. Lack of motivation, waning motivation is a normal part. And one way as well we can kind of keep motivation is to kind of describe how we want to be. Like we can do it in a vision board, we can do it in a written paragraph, where every day we start to imagine, you know, how we are going to be, how our life is going to be different. Just reading it every day can keep reigniting the motivation to change. And also understanding that, you know, we're not going to be able to do it every day. We're not going to be able to always say no, you know, when we want to say no. Sometimes we are going to default to old patterns because the transition from, you know, one neural pathway to creating another, we have to create new pathways. And the old pathways to whatever habit are very strong. So we slowly kind of start to build the new ones. We're not going to suddenly cross over or jump into a new pathway that doesn't actually yet exist. So think about your change. Think about what you want to do. Think about the small steps, understanding that when you take a small step in the right direction and repeat it over and over again, you're starting to build those new neural pathways. You will slip back, but then when you slip back, you know, acknowledge that this is part of the process of change. Change is a process. It's not an event. We are not going to wake up a new person with new pathways already embedded in our brain. It's just not going to happen. These pathways have to be repeated over and over and over and over again. So, as I said, you know, understanding what you're up against as a human being, trying to change long-standing patterns is not easy, but it's absolutely doable if you can do it step by step and little by little. So good luck.